All right, guys, I'm about to head out for the day, but I thought I would put out like a really quick video kind of talking about like Splatoon Raiders and what's been happening with this because I've actually been kind of down on the game. I've been kind of critical of it. I don't think it's as good as mainline Splatoon. It's not really what I wanted from the franchise. I was kind of disappointed by it. But there's no denying that a lot of other people are really into it to the point where like it's become one of the most popular Nintendo games ever made on Metacritic, and a lot of people are declaring it to be like the reason to own a Switch 2 right now. Now, I don't agree with that assessment. I think a lot of the people who are saying this are kind of plebs and don't really know the first thing about Splatoon. For a lot of people, this is their first Splatoon game. They're getting into it because it's a single player experience because they don't have to worry about going up against tryhards online. Like, again, there's a lot of reason this game has become popular and successful in spite of itself. But I think fundamentally, what's happened is that traditionally the entire cope about Splatoon was this idea that like it couldn't possibly succeed in the Western market because the market was too saturated. Right? When Splatoon came out on Wii U, it was a hit. It was a hit almost immediately. But the narrative immediately was that, like, oh, it can't compete with COD or Overwatch or any of the real third-person shooters, right? It can't compete with any of the real online competitive shooters, right? And that was the narrative right out the bat. But, like, and people kept playing those games, and those games kept doing well, but so was Splatoon. Like, Splatoon has spent the past 10 years, like, slowly building up an audience, slowly becoming competitive, slowly becoming bigger than I think than the majority of these other brands. And now with Raiders, we're kind of at the point where, with the downfall of Borderlands and Destiny, after years of hyping those up as the next big thing, Splatoon Raiders was able to burst into the market and just seize control of this like entire subgenre of online shooters, right? Splatoon specifically was able to capitalize on the hole in the market that the looter shooters left behind when they folded. Okay, like there is no future for Destiny or Borderlands. Anybody who's paying attention knows this. So it actually makes a lot of sense that a lot of people who have traditionally been more into those games would start siphoning into something else. And considering, like, Overwatch, one of the things with that game was that it was colorful and it was different. There are no other shooters like this, man. Splatoon exists, is better, and is getting more fans all the time. And what we've seen is because Splatoon has maintained its relevancy for so long, because it keeps introducing new games, new characters, new mechanics, more modes over a period of time, and has been consistently keeping it reasonably high quality, like you're seeing more and more people start becoming huge fans of the brand. And there have been issues when it comes to like this series. Like for me personally, I felt like there was a lack of innovation, but I think considering where they're at right now, where they're still trying to cultivate their fan base, it actually makes a lot of sense to not be like, to radically change the game with every new installment. Like, because the original core idea was so good to begin with, and everyone knows it. Like, all they have to do is just keep reaching new people and keep, like, having new people discover how great Splatoon is. And that's kind of what we've been seeing over the past decade. Like, it is really easy to forget that Splatoon 2 came out a decade ago. Well, like more like 9.5 years, but like, a decade ago, Splatoon 2 came out. Actually, yeah, it's more like 9 months. Yeah, okay. More like 9 years. Yeah, 9 years. Yeah, okay. 9 years, 2 months. Okay. Yeah, 9 years and 2 months ago, Splatoon 2 came out, took the Switch by storm, was a huge deal. And like at the time, the initial reception was that like this game failed, it's just a rehash of the original, this is a dead IP, and you had every single YouTuber like get upset whenever the series was talked about. Okay, like it was something that people got visibly uncomfortable with whenever it came on screen during a Nintendo Direct. Right, like everybody was just like, oh yeah, move on to the next thing, we don't care about this, nobody cares about Splatoon. Right, like that was the narrative for a long time. But it seems as if that strategy long-term has paid off in a big way, because so much of the discourse around Splatoon was this idea that it was just the same thing over and over again, that it didn't appeal to different groups of people, that it was only popular in Japan. Like, now that Nintendo has penetrated the Western market with the looter shooter thing, we are seeing this huge explosion in interest in Splatoon to the point where, like, I think the masses will not be able to downplay it, because I've seen a lot of game journal articles come out and try and do damage control, like the VGC one that tried to say that, like, well, some people might not think it's that good, and it dawned on me, and I commented on this on the Twitter, and it got a ton of impressions, like 40,000. Would you ever see anyone say this about, like, any other Game of the Year contender? Would you see anyone say this about, like, Baldur's Gate 3 or Astrobot or Elden Ring or like Expedition 33? No. Like, when it comes to the majority of, like, very extremely well-received player games, right? Games that are received very well by the players. Like, people just take it at face value. They're fine with saying, like, yeah, it's popular with its audience. But with Splatoon, like, you're seeing a lot of people try and do this caveat where they're just like, oh, yeah, it's just Nintendo fans being weird. Like, they have nothing else to play. This game isn't taking off. It's not that big of a deal. And, like, that is very clearly, observably not true. Okay, this game is, like, killing it right now. Like, not only, like, in sales-wise, but on social media. And, like, you know, it really feels like people are starting to get more invested in the brand and invested in the lore and the characters, you know? Like, I think I've seen more lore, fan art of Shiver than I have, like, any other, like, Splatoon character so far, right? Like, we've seen this huge surge in interest after this release. And, like, it just feels like, to me, it's very evident that, like, Splatoon, after a decade, has finally taken off in the West. And there's no real denying it anymore. Because that's what happened when Splatoon 3 came out. You had DSP come out and, like, mock the Japanese for not playing real shooters. But, like, the reality is Splatoon's quite a bit better than our shooters. It always has been. And, like, will continue evolving and improving for, like, years to come. Like, I don't understand how aging motherfuckers like Phil or Max are going to be able to keep writing this series off. And I don't think they can. Like, that's the issue we're seeing here right now. That's the problem, is that we're seeing, like, the community rally to try and bury this game, to try and downplay it, and it's, like, it's one of those situations where they just can't anymore. Like, I would compare this a lot to, like, something like Animal Crossing New Leaf, right? Where, like, you had Wild World and New Leaf that were, like, Wild World and City Folk that were huge hits. But at the time, like, you know, they were buried and underappreciated, and everyone just ignored them. It wasn't until New Leaf and then New Horizons that people began to accept that, like, Animal Crossing was now one of Nintendo's biggest IPs. And, like, it seems like Splatoon is kind of going through a similar arc, where, like, it takes the 10-year period to, like, reach market saturation, to be competitive with other franchises, you know, to establish itself, and then it takes another 10 to, like, surpass it and become bigger than its competitors and really start driving out its competitors from the industry. Because, like, here's the thing about Splatoon. What other kid-friendly shooters do you know that exist? Like, take your time. There is not a single example that's as relevant as Splatoon. Like, it's already dominant in that niche, but the idea that, like, kids can play, like, COD or, like, other first-person shooters, like, that's been so ingrained, like, culturally speaking, that nobody really cared or noticed. But I think going forward, it will be a lot of people's, like, favorite shooter franchise. Like, I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of going to become, like, the third-person shooter equivalent of Pokemon, where, like, it just has this, like, audience of all ages that will stick with it because of how unique it is and how distinct it is from other competitors. Like, there's nothing that, like, something like Overwatch can do to compete with that. And in fact, Overwatch, which was billed as, like, the game of the decade, you know, the most important new IP from Blizzard that decade, you know, the big online shooter, like, that's completely fallen off. Like, Splatoon's model has worked more effectively than Overwatch's has. Like, you can jump into a new Splatoon game anytime and pick up where you left off, right? But they're also constantly, like, tweaking it, adding updates, adding new weapons, maps, and eventually releasing new games with new characters. Like, the Splatoon release cycle works a lot better than its competitors. And that's led to situations like this, where they could radically change the core gameplay of Splatoon, be experimental, put out a spin-off title, and have it be massively successful, you know, without compromising the original mainline Splatoon that, like, people really love to begin with. And I feel like this is a real dangerous thing for the industry. Like, I feel like the industry is not prepared for having to deal with Nintendo being seen as like viably as having their own viable online shooter. Because traditionally this has been like the only reason that like everybody ignores Nintendo is that like, well, I just want to play online with my friends and shoot each other. Like Splatoon does that better than anything else. And we're in that early stage of like that being generally accepted by the public. Like we are in the early stages of Splatoon becoming a major household hit name in America, and there is nothing that anybody can do to stop it.